Well, it's very clear in the book. It isn't. I mean, there was something that she admitted to me at the end, but that she tried. It is this constant trying to reach each other that she and I both were.
At 78 years old, Sally Field isn't chasing validation anymore. She's not climbing Hollywood's treacherous ladder or desperately seeking the approval of casting directors. She has nothing left to prove. With 2 Academy Awards resting on her mantle, a string of unforgettable roles spanning decades, and a reputation as one of the most beloved actresses in American film history, Sally has reached a place where applause no longer defines her worth. But behind the shimmering facade of heartfelt performances and standing ovations lies a woman who has quietly carried the scars of a brutal, often ruthless business, a world where every kind word had a price, and betrayal often arrived from the people standing closest to her. Decades, she smiled for cameras and carried scenes, delivering performances that left audiences breathless. But away from the bright lights, Sally Field was a woman keeping score. She remembered every cutting remark, every professional slight, every co-star who crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Now, with the wisdom of age and nothing left to lose, Sally is revealing the names of the 6 people in Hollywood she despised most. These weren't petty squabbles or fleeting disagreements forgotten with time. They were deep, bruising clashes, some that unfolded directly on set, others orchestrated quietly behind the scenes. And for Sally, they shaped her career and haunted her long after the cameras stopped rolling. Start with the one name no one expected to top the list: Burt Reynolds. To the public, they were the fairy tale couple of late 70s Hollywood. Sally and Burt, magnetic, mischievous, and perfectly matched. Their chemistry in Smokey and the Bandit was electric, playful, and so palpable that fans believed it had to be real. And it was, at first. But behind the scenes, Sally later confessed, the relationship was suffocating. Burt Reynolds was, in her words, controlling. He thrived on dominance, dismissing anyone who threatened his carefully crafted spotlight, including her. Sally described how he would belittle her in front of others with casual cruelty, offering backhanded compliments in interviews and then retreating into punishing silences or passive-aggressive jabs when they were alone. A brutally candid memoir, In Pieces, Sally peeled back the shimmering Hollywood veneer to expose a far more unsettling truth. Burt wouldn't let her speak freely, often interrupting her in conversations or overriding her decisions, both in their personal life and on professional matters. To him, she was a prized possession, something beautiful to show off, not someone to be cherished for her mind and talent. The most painful wounds, she later admitted, came not from what he said, but from how expertly he could withdraw love as a form of control. One moment, he'd be affectionate and disarming, the next, cold and distant. And even as her fame soared, standing beside him, Sally felt invisible. "I was there," she once said, "but not me, not the full me." Though she spent years by his side, investing herself in the hope that their love could be salvaged, she later confessed with heart-wrenching honesty, "I wanted to love him. I did love him, but he hurt me." The second name on Sally Field's list of deepest grudges belonged to a man whose on-screen brooding intensity masked an equally prickly and difficult personality behind the scenes: Tommy Lee Jones. In 1981, Sally signed on to star opposite Jones in Back Roads, a gritty road movie about 2 damaged drifters. On paper, it should have been a triumph. 2 powerhouse actors, both unafraid to get their hands dirty, delivering a dark, unconventional love story. But from the moment filming began, it was a nightmare. Sally later confessed that working with Jones was one of the loneliest, most emotionally exhausting experiences of her career. She arrived on set, eager to collaborate, hoping for a creative partnership rooted in mutual respect. Tommy Lee Jones showed up with his walls already built, high and thick. From the first table read, it was clear to everyone in the room that he wasn't interested in camaraderie. Little, offering curt, clipped responses when addressed. And when he did engage, his words carried a sharp, almost surgical precision, not meant to start conversations, but to end them. Sally, ever the optimist, tried to break through his stony exterior, offering warmth, humor, and kindness in the quiet moments between takes. But it was like trying to coax warmth from a stone. She later described how, during filming, he would barely make eye contact with her unless a scene demanded. And when their eyes did meet, there was a visible, almost unnerving contempt lurking behind his stare. It wasn't the simple discomfort of a reserved man unaccustomed to small talk. It was something heavier, as if he resented her very presence. Sally would come to understand that part of it was professional jealousy. At the time, she was riding the crest of her career, her name attached to critical acclaim, box office success, and public adoration. Tommy Lee, though talented and respected, was still considered a niche actor, known for intense, brooding performances that rarely invited public affection. Crew members picked up on the tension immediately. Between scenes, while other actors and technicians laughed, swapped stories, and gathered around craft services, Tommy Lee would retreat into himself, pacing in the shadows, headphones on, or alone in his trailer. It wasn't mere privacy, it was an act of separation. Sally felt it too. The thick, invisible barrier that hung between them, no matter how many scenes they shared. And while audiences eventually watched two characters fall for each other on screen, behind the camera was no tenderness, no teasing banter, no shared glances, only a thick, oppressive tension that settled over the set like humidity before a storm. It was one of the loneliest experiences of Sally's career, and one she would quietly carry with her long after the cameras stopped rolling. It was more than professional friction. There was a coldness in Jones that cut deeper than mere personality clash. Sally admitted that she would finish long, emotionally wrenching scenes only to have him walk away without a word of acknowledgement. No camaraderie, no shared triumph, just a sense of invisible walls closing in. He tried to break through, hoping to salvage something for the sake of the film, but every effort was met with indifference or barely concealed irritation. Crew members noticed it too. The oppressive silence between the two leads when the director called cut, the heaviness that hung in the air. Sally, it was an isolating experience that took a toll on her confidence. In later years, when asked about Jones, she wouldn't elaborate beyond a curt, "He wasn't kind." That, from someone known for her boundless empathy and forgiving nature, spoke volumes. It was a wound that never fully healed, and decades later, his name remained etched on the short list of people she would never forgive. Third name on Sally Field's private blacklist wasn't a legendary leading man or an old guard studio boss. It was a rising young star, one Sally had extended kindness to, mentored, and welcomed into her world at a time when Hollywood could be especially cruel to younger actresses. And yet, that generosity was met with betrayal. While Sally has never publicly named this actress outright, those close to her inner circle have long speculated about who it was. And the story behind their falling out has become one of those whispered legends inside Hollywood's closed ranks. Sally, ever gracious, took this up-and-coming star under her wing while filming a major studio project in the late 1980s. The young actress was talented, no question, but insecure, hungry for status, and eager to leapfrog her way into the A-list. Sally remembered how she encouraged her, vouched for her when producers expressed doubts, and even stepped aside to allow the younger woman to shine in crucial scenes. But it wasn't long before the admiration turned into quiet competition. Whispers reached Sally's ears, rumors that the actress had been mocking her behind closed doors, calling her too old for this business, and accusing Sally of clinging to roles meant for younger women. It was the ultimate betrayal, because it hurt her career, but because it came from someone she had defended. The breaking point came at a high-profile awards ceremony. Sally was up for a major honor that night, and as the evening unfolded, she overheard the young actress joking with a group of studio executives, dismissing her performance as safe. The kind of work you give applause because it makes you feel nostalgic. The words cut deeper than she cared to admit. She carried herself with poise throughout the evening, smiling for cameras, accepting compliments. But inside, something hardened. That night, Sally drew a line. She would never speak to the actress again, never share a set, and would refuse any project where their names appeared side by side. She wouldn't retaliate. That wasn't her style. But she made sure through back channels and trusted allies that they would never cross paths again. The fourth name on Sally Field's list of people she could never forgive was a man whose charm on screen masked a ruthless streak behind the scenes. He was a respected actor, beloved by critics and audiences alike, with a resume full of iconic performances. But when Sally worked with him in the mid-1990s on a major studio drama, one that would go on to receive award season buzz, she discovered the dark side of that charm. The moment rehearsals began, the actor made it clear he saw himself as the film's centerpiece, despite the fact that Sally was its true emotional core. Every decision he made, every conversation he had with the director and producers was about elevating his role and marginalizing hers. At first, Sally gave him the benefit of the doubt. She'd spent decades in the business and had seen egos run wild before. But this was different. This wasn't the usual jockeying for screen time. It was calculated, insidious. She learned through whispers from crew members and sympathetic co-stars that he'd been actively lobbying behind the scenes to have her character's most poignant scenes trimmed or reassigned to supporting players. He saw her as a threat, not because she was a prima donna or difficult to work with, but because her natural, lived-in authenticity threatened to overshadow his carefully rehearsed performance. The betrayal cut deepest during a pivotal confrontation scene, one that had been a centerpiece of the script since day one. It was meant to be Sally's moment, raw, unfiltered, and vulnerable. The night before shooting, she learned the scene had been heavily rewritten. Emotional weight was now shifted to him, the dialogue gutted, her character's voice muted. He fought back, confronting the director, who confessed that pressure from the top had forced the changes. The actor never acknowledged what he'd done. Greeted her on set the next morning with the same polished smile, as though nothing had happened. Sally delivered the scene, refusing to let them see her rattle, but vowed then and there never to work with him again. Fifth name on Sally Field's list wasn't a bitter rival or a domineering male co-star. It was a woman she had once admired, a Hollywood legend whose name carried weight not just in the industry, but in the hearts of audiences around the world. Sally grew up watching her films, studying her poise, her sharp timing, and the effortless way she commanded a scene. So when fate finally brought them together in the early 1990s for a prestigious ensemble film, Sally approached the project with genuine excitement. She was eager to work alongside a woman she considered both a role model and a trailblazer. But almost immediately, that admiration turned to disillusionment. The older actress, known for her glamorous image and biting wit, wielded her power on set like a weapon. Where Sally had expected camaraderie, she found condescension. The actress would openly mock younger cast members' performances, make thinly veiled jabs about Sally's transition from television to film, and belittle anyone who dared contradict her creative ideas. What cut deepest wasn't the public put-downs. Sally could handle a sharp tongue. It was the private whispers, the cold shoulders at cast dinners, and the orchestrated attempts to isolate her from the director's inner circle. One day, during a heated rehearsal for a crucial scene between their two characters, the older actress loudly dismissed Sally's interpretation of a pivotal emotional moment, accusing her of playing for sympathy and undermining the realism of the film. The room fell silent. Sally, never one for confrontation, swallowed the humiliation and finished the rehearsal. She knew something had shifted. The older actress's star power was too great for the director to intervene, so the toxicity lingered, souring what should have been a career highlight. In interviews years later, When asked about working with legendary actresses of the Golden Age, Sally would tactfully mention respect for their contributions, but never name this one. To those who knew the story, the omission spoke louder than any tell-all could. It was a cruel reminder that in Hollywood, your idols can sometimes be your greatest disappointments. Sixth and final name on Sally Field's unspoken blacklist wasn't a co-star, but a man behind the camera, a director she once trusted. Early in her career, Sally had learned that directors could either be a performer's fiercest advocate or their quietest saboteur. This particular filmmaker, known for his visionary style and effortless charm, initially presented himself as a mentor, claiming to see in Sally a depth no one else had fully tapped. At first, she believed him. He spoke of nuanced characters, subtle storytelling, and the importance of female-driven narratives in an industry dominated by men. For a young actress trying to shake off the sunny, sitcom image of Gidget and the Flying Nun, it was a dream opportunity. But as production progressed, the promises began to unravel. The script, once focused on Sally's character's inner life and transformation, was gradually reshaped to highlight the male leads. The emotional complexity she'd been promised was stripped away, replaced with reductive dialogue and over-sexualized scenes designed to appeal to studio executives rather than serve the story. Sally pushed back, raising concerns in private meetings. First, the director feigned empathy, promising revisions that never came. Then came the ultimate betrayal. On the morning of a pivotal scene, one Sally had spent weeks preparing for, emotionally raw and exposed, she arrived on set to find it completely rewritten. Not only had her most vulnerable moment been cut, but the new pages positioned her character as little more than a plot device, serving the male lead's arc rather than her own. Sally was devastated. When she confronted the director, he shrugged, dismissing her concerns with a patronizing, "It's just business, sweetheart." Words stung worse than the betrayal itself. It was a turning point. From that day on, Sally Field vowed to never again surrender her instincts or integrity for the sake of keeping the peace. The betrayal on that set wasn't just about a lost scene. It was about dignity, about the quiet, insidious way the industry had a habit of trimming down women like her, asking them to be agreeable, take the rewrite, to smile through the disrespect, and thank the men in charge for the privilege. That morning on set, holding those butchered pages in her hands, something in Sally hardened. She made herself a promise. Never again. Never again would she sit in a room where her voice was muted. Never again would she nod along while her characters were stripped of their agency to make room for male egos. Years that followed, she turned down roles that felt like compromises, parts where the character's only purpose was to orbit a man's storyline, to serve as wife, mother, or romantic prize without depth of her own. Even when the paychecks were tempting, or the studio executives promised it would be good for exposure, Sally stood firm, fought for scripts that honored the complexities of the women she portrayed, refusing to flatten them into stereotypes. When directors questioned her, challenged her, or accused her of being difficult, she wore the label like armor. It wasn't without consequence. Sally knew her outspokenness cost her roles, strained relationships, and earned her enemies in a town built on fragile egos. Of the same people who once sang her praises quietly began passing her over for younger, more compliant actresses. But it didn't matter. Knew the roles she did accept would be hers on her terms. Decades later, when journalists and film historians asked Sally to reflect on the directors who shaped her career, she would graciously list a handful of names. Those who treated her as a partner, who valued her instincts, who saw the fire behind the smile. But that one man's name was always conspicuously absent. Her silence wasn't accidental. It was a deliberate, unflinching verdict. Final reminder that while this business could take many things, it would never again take her voice.